Could my eating disorder have been prevented? Absolutely.
I think I looked on the internet or something and I was like, okay, that's me, I'm bulimic.
I probably lost out on 3 years of my life.
Eating disorders are an extremely serious disorder. They have both physical as well as psychological complications.
Like, a lot of people don't know what to look for in an eating disorder.
But really they're disorders where someone puts more and more importance on how they look and as who they are, as opposed to their sense of humor, their role in life, their role as a friend, their companionship, their intelligence. For some reason something happens and it gets bottled down or shifted down to, I am what I look like, and that's what's important.
Most of my family is like slim people, so I guess it's just important to them.
One of the most critical aspects of an eating disorder is that it robs the person of their self-worth and takes them away from their life.
It felt like it was taking over my whole being, that I had no control over it.
We all play a role in the contribution of eating disorders and the prevention of eating disorders as parents, as teachers, coaches, guidance counselors. We can all play a role. There's a number of contributing factors for an individual to develop an eating disorder. Society plays a very big role. Families play a role. Peers play a role. And so those can all be motivating or contributing factors to the development of an eating disorder, development of disturbed thoughts, disturbed behaviors. And unfortunately, we live in a society that contributes to a number of those different factors and just can exacerbate those behaviors.
The excessive marketing towards kids, particularly girls, and the makeup and the, having them fit into bras and panty sets at age 6, it's really very disturbing.
The causes are multifactorial, whether you look at their biology, whether you look at the pressures of society, the pressures of the family unit, the pressures of the belief systems around them and their friends. They come from all directions, that pressure that to be thin is to be successful, to be acceptable.
Pressure from, I don't know if it was from myself or from my family, to be perfect. I was a dancer from a young age, so it's really body image orientated, and that was important. And watching my mom growing up, watching my mom exercising, it was a really normal thing.
So the heavy focus on weight, on fitting into a certain bathing suit, on having a certain image, that, a competitive image. And I don't think they do that anymore. In competitive swimming, the focus isn't on how you look in a bathing suit. So they've come a long way, but now that's just replaced with media. And now it's universal. The focus on body image is universal for all kids in commercials, etc. So could it have been prevented for me? Yes, it could have, without that heavy focus on body image, with nutritional counseling. Instead of just telling swimmers what body weight they should have been, tell us how to successfully have that body weight with proper balance of exercise and nutrition. We never had that.
It's so important that we talk to overweight children, normal weight children, and underweight children all the same. That we create environments that are weight neutral, where weight is just not an important factor. We talk about living healthy lifestyles where all foods fit, where we're not treating overweight children any differently, we're not feeding them any differently, we're not pushing them to exercise or nag them about living any differently than children who are normal weight or underweight. And again, we don't place a large value on that weight, and all children should know that they're loved regardless. It's critical that we talk to children about the fact that media is just not real. We're not, even the models themselves don't actually look like that, because there's so many touch-ups involved. So it's important to share that with children, important to share and critically reflect on the messages that they're hearing within the media. Media always tells us that we're not good enough or that we should change the way that we look. We never hear be happy or celebrate your size or celebrate what you look like, which is such an important message.
It became a self-esteem issue, but everything revolved around food and not eating, because now that was my new identity, to be the thin person.
People would compliment me on either like my artwork or like my schooling, and I didn't see it. I thought everything I did was awful.
Eating disorders are often about the way that someone feels about themselves. Do they love themselves? Do they believe that they matter? Do they believe that they have a voice?
All the time I tried to please other people. Like I was thinking, well, what do they want me to do? And I'd try and do that instead of doing what I want to do.
Very few of the individuals I see are very good friends to themselves. They don't speak to themselves in a way that you would speak to a friend. They usually there's no justice in their self-vision. They tend to focus only on the negative, see themselves in the negative, criticize themselves in a negative fashion. They rarely tell themselves, good job.
And we learn those things. We learn those things from our family, from our peers, from the media. All of those things can contribute to a disordered belief system. And I think that makes it very difficult for one to then get out of the belief system or to recover from an eating disorder.
Family history is a risk factor for eating disorders. If you come from a long line of dieters, people who are overweight, people who have issues with food, you're going to be more likely yourself to pay attention to that. If I look up to Mom, and Mom values herself seemingly more in her waistline than whether or not she's a good mom, I'm going to be thinking this is what's important. If I have parents who are going to the gym all the time and they're obsessed with how they look, I'm going to think how I look is important.
I hid my eating disorder for pretty much a year and a half. No one knew.
I think there's a pretty good chance if you suspect someone in your family has an eating disorder, they probably do. Because generally they're fairly sneaky, they're fairly willing and able to keep it hidden for some time until it's kind of there. You know, if someone disappears after meals and goes to the bathroom, there's probably something going on in the bathroom. If someone is always saying, I ate someplace else, then there's probably something going on with their intake. If you have an adolescent child and they're started off to be essentially normal weight and they're losing weight, there's a problem there. They should not be losing weight. Adolescents are meant to gain, to grow. And so if that's going on, there's probably an issue there. And if they don't want to talk to you about it, almost by definition, it's an eating disorder.
Nobody knew. I hid it from absolutely everybody, and I was still living at home at that point, and I was able to hide it from my parents. I don't know how. I think because I was old enough to be going out for dinner or going out with friends that my parents didn't really know when I was eating and when I wasn't.
And that's what young women and men do with eating disorders. They practice their beliefs in a hiddenest fashion. The more we can help draw them out of concern, the better off they are.
I thought I was fine. Like, I had no idea that I had any problems at all with my eating. And it actually took other people telling me that I had an eating disorder before I actually realized I did have one.
I think it's quite common for them to not want to get help, to perhaps recognize that there isn't a problem. I think that's most frustrating for families as they wait and hope that their loved one will begin to seek help.
I'm pretty sure that I would have balked at any intervention, unfortunately, because I would have denied that it was bad enough to need any sort of intervention.
I think if you're going to approach someone who you suspect might be struggling with an eating disorder, I think it's really important that you set up a time to talk with them when there's going to be no distractions. This is a really important conversation, and I think it's important to be as calm as you can. I think it's important to be as honest as you can, and you really want to focus in on their health, their happiness, and their safety. There could be an invitation to promise not to tell anyone, and that's not going to be helpful because eating disorders are an illness that often thrive on secrecy. And so I think if you collude in a secret, then you're helping to maintain the illness. And what we want to be doing is encouraging the individual who's struggling to seek professional help. I think it's important to recognize that they may react in denial or anger, and so we may need to approach the dialogue again. The key being we always want to leave the door open for ongoing dialogue.
When we think a lot about food and weight, and we place a large value on those things, that we teach children that those are important things as well. So it's so important that we examine what we do because we send very strong messages to children.
An ideal that is really big, I think, in society right now is this food is good food and this food is bad food. And I would really, the biggest advice I would say is to shatter that belief.
We can teach children to develop healthy relationships with food by really emphasizing that all foods fit, that we don't restrict them from certain foods, that all foods are part of a healthy eating plan, and we give children control in terms of what's the amount that they want to eat.
I was always telling myself in my head, oh, you can stop if you want, and I got to the point where I didn't want to do it anymore, but I was still doing it, so that's when I realized I needed help.
I think it's paramount that the person who's struggling with an eating disorder has someone professionally that they can talk to and get help. And the family's role isn't to be the therapist, but to support, to provide guidance, to be part of the solution.
But I really think that a person who wants to change has to make the decision for themselves. Because I went to the hospital for a year to make my mom happy, but I wasn't really present. I wasn't there, I wasn't doing the work. I was doing it so she was happy. And finally when I showed up, I was in the exact same programs, but finally I was there for me. And that's when changes started to happen.
I think the one single determinant in terms of recovery is the individual's motivation and their readiness to change. Once they have made a decision to get better, I think everything else begins to fall into place.
To me, recovery is freedom, and to be able to feel like you are in control of your own destiny as opposed to being controlled by an eating disorder.
Do not let food become your sole purpose in life, whether it's to control food or to minimize food in any way. There's so many other ways of achieving success and being a beautiful person. It's not about body weight. It's not about the image you portray. It's about happiness. It's about self-esteem. It's about finding out what your passion is and following it. And food has got nothing to do with that. And unfortunately, our world is so focused on being slim and looking a certain way. And we need to realize the truth in that nobody's perfect. Everybody has a story, and just search for what your truth is. Search for what your passion is and go for it.
Like with an eating disorder, things became more of an obsession. And now they're, I guess, like I'm passionate about things instead of being obsessive about them.
Every once in a while, I have hard times, but not that bad. Like really compared to what life was like before, like little things, but they're thoughts, they're not behaviors.
It's all in our head. And our brain is this incredible organ that takes in information and stores information, so why rent space in your brain for the mean things that people say or the mean stuff out there? Replace it. You have the power to do it. Replace it with positive things about yourself. And it's not easy, but it's one step at a time. Start replacing all of the negative stuff that you hear and see around you, and surround yourself with positive. It's just that easy.